So good morning, everybody. We're ready to get started. Day 2, Google Camp. You can see that that John and I are both in our tropical gear, yeah, representing. So we want you to have fun today. Again, we want you to be sharing with each other and be learning from each other. We have a great panel planned for you this morning. So some practitioners who are going to share their experiences and their insights this morning. Before we do that, we want to put out a couple of reminders. So one is, we really appreciate your feedback for all the sessions. And so I want to just remind people of how to get to the place where you can give feedback. So, for example, if I attended Alice Keeler's session this morning, when I click on that to get to the Zoom link, that's also where I would provide feedback. So there's I can click on one of these happy faces, and I can also add a comment. So that's how you get to the feedback. If you didn't know how to do that, and so you weren't doing it yesterday, you can always go back to previous sessions. So right now it's just showing today's when I'm in Sched, but you'll see this button here at the top that says Wednesday. If I click on that, then it'll show all of yesterday's sessions as well. So you can go back and give some feedback if you didn't get a chance to yesterday. Okay. So with that, I'm going to, once again, my name is Dennis Large. I'm the Director of Educational Technology at the Riverside County Office of Ed. And our partner in Google Camp is Menifee Union School District. So I'll let John say good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Another great day. Yeah, look forward to another great day of learning.
Excellent. All right. We showed that. Yeah, this one's you, John.
Yeah, so if you're kind of in the if you're in the Zoom and you want to be able to see both the participants and the slideshow, up at the very top there's a view options button. You can click that and do a side-by-side mode so you can see both participants and slideshow. Just a nice thing in case you're looking at the right side of every slide and the presenter's pointing to something and it just happens to be covered by somebody's face. So
all right.
And remember, just a couple of things. Obviously, Hawaiian shirt day, tropical shirt day. If you forgot to do that, my guess is you're probably at home, and if there's something in the closet, grab it, take a picture, tweet it out. We'd love to give. We got some free 2022 Google Camp registrations. Also, again, today we have some free books to give away. So we're going to be doing that at lunch. So please make sure to come back to our lunchtime session. One, it's a great session that we're really looking forward to. And two, come see if you can win a book. So look forward to seeing you guys there.
All right. So I was searching for Dave from Schools First. Dave, are you on here? Moses, do you know if we have Dave Comforts? Oh, he is here. So let's Dave, we're going to give you the mic for a minute. So Schools First is our primary sponsor, and they've been our sponsor for every single year of Google Camp. This is year 6, and they've been amazing. And David is the specific person that we've been working with every year. There's David.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Dennis.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. So it's Dave again from Schools First. So yesterday I spoke about how Schools First support school employees from your new higher orientation all the way through to retirement and beyond. I talked about our summer savings programs that we offer, our classroom supplies loans and school employee credit card, but really that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we offer a technology loan so you can upgrade your computer, tablet, smartboard, whatever you need, up to $2,500 at a rate of 2.75% instead of the 25% that the big box stores charge. We're also the administrator. Yeah, we're also administrator for many district retirement accounts and have salaried, not commissioned team members to help navigate your retirement. And then lastly, your Schools First membership is completely free. And when I say free, I don't mean with a little asterisk that, says only with direct deposit or only if you use the ATM so many times or some weird hoops to jump through. It's just free. And really the benefit there is you can use us for absolutely everything or just one thing. And we're not going to penalize you for not going all in with us. So I'll drop the link and the promo code JOIN542 in the chat again. And, I encourage you to start taking advantage of all the benefits that Schools First has for you and your family. So thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. Another Google Camp, really awesome. And I look forward to supporting it in years to come. Thanks so much and have a great day.
Thank you, Dave. That's perfect.
bet.
We
Yeah.
truly appreciate Schools First. Just a reminder, we have some featured speakers. So Alice Keeler is doing her session again today. So if you didn't get to see her yesterday, you've got another shot to see Alice talk about Google Classroom and progress reports. And we also have Jennifer Brown from Google here to do what's new from Google for Education. So check out those sessions if those speak to you. A reminder, today's lunch time learning series session is by the Equity in Action CA folks, the Equity in Action California, making learning spaces more welcoming and inclusive. So Sue Thoughts, Tori Wadlington, Jennifer Dean, Toya, and Leticia Citizen. I believe they're all going to be here at lunch. They've got some really, really interesting stuff to share with you. So we hope to see you at lunch. And that's where we'll give away a couple of Alice Keeler's books as well. All right, with that, we are ready to launch into our opening session. Instead of a traditional keynote this year for day 2, we're doing an expert panel. Lessons learned from a year of COVID. You can see the panelists there. We'll do some quick introductions, but I am going to turn it over to John Morgan and Heidi Baines, who will be your moderators. So John, Heidi.
All right, thank you very much. So yeah, a full year of COVID. Not everything's been going perfectly, and we wanted to take some time to highlight some people who've done some amazing work, things that have worked, things that haven't worked, just some amazing risk takers in our field. So let's go through and we'll do some quick introductions. So let's start with Molly.
Hi, I am Molly Large, and I am the proud principal of Edwin Rhodes Elementary School in Chino Valley Unified School District.
All right, Amber.
Hi, everybody. I am a secondary teacher at LA Unified. I teach high school social science at the 11th and 12th grade level. Happy to be here today.
Ashley.
There, I'm Ashley Yazarlu. I am an educational technology and CTI coach in Hemet Unified School District. I'm really excited to be with you this morning.
Awesome, thank you. Shalimar.
Good morning, everyone. I am Shalimar Niles. I'm a 5th grade teacher here in Menifee.
Thank you, Melissa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Lafayette. I'm the lead school counselor for the Menifee Union School District.
Thank you. And Joseph, sorry.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Joseph Williams, the Executive Director of Technology for the Paris Union High School District.
All right, thank you. And I want to turn it over to the real professional, the real professional moderator on this one. So I'll turn it over to Heidi Baines.
Thank you, John, and thanks everyone for being here. My name is Heidi Baines. I'm a coordinator of educational technology here at the Riverside County Office of Ed. So we'll go ahead and dig in. So this first question is for all of you. So we'd like to hear from all of you on this one. Just tell us about a risk or risks that you took this year. Is there something you do again or something you do differently? Just kind of give us an overview of what your year looked like. And can we start with Molly again?
Sure, though I wouldn't say I took any risks. My job was to support my teachers in taking risks and make sure that they had whatever resources they need. We did buy distance learning playbook for all teachers, and I did a 6-hour paid professional development. 33 of my 38 teaching staff participated in that. So I would consider that a huge success. But really my job was, anytime they said, can I try this? My job was to say yes.
That's amazing. I love that recommendation. Thank you. Go ahead, Amber.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I honestly feel like my entire year was a risk as a secondary teacher and a relatively new teacher too. So I got comfortable with the uncomfortable, and I felt like that's what we kind of all had to do in a lot of ways. One thing I did was leave a traditional grading system behind. I started implementing standard-based grading, which I attended an awesome session yesterday. Jenny, I believe, hosted that session. That was great, by the way, if you're here. Yeah, standards-based grading was really key this year. So it was challenging, throwing away things like penalties for late work and starting grade conferences, one-on-one conferences with individual students where they tell me what grade they believe they have earned based on evidence. But it was awesome in the end. So that's one risk that I would gladly take again.
Ooh, that's a great one. And that is a whole nother panel discussion on standards-based grading. We can do a whole nother hour on just that. Thank you so much. Ashley.
Yeah, so in my district, I'm part of a small but mighty team of 3 people who are providing professional development and coaching with educational technology to teachers in our district. And prior to the pandemic, as an ed tech coach, it was very challenging to get a lot of our teachers to see the value of implementing ed tech into their teaching and learning practices. But once the pandemic hit and we were kind of all forced into this virtual learning, I think we all know teachers were like thrown into this tech ocean, and it was sink or swim. So we knew that as this ed tech team that we were going to have to, we didn't have the capacity to train all of our TK through 12 teachers on all the things tech that they needed to know and be able to provide high quality learning experiences for the students. So after the initial craziness of the lockdown, we decided, you know, it's clear our teachers are going to need to up their tech game. So luckily we had the support of our district leadership and the COVID monies that came in. So with that, we were able to plan and implement our first ever virtual tech fest for every teacher in our district. And so what we did to do that was we leveraged our network and our resources and essentially put on a small scale Google Camp, kind of like this. And we even used Sked similar to this. And it was our district's professional development day at the start of the school year. And so what we did is we solicited our techno teachers who were digital leads in our district and teachers who had these tech savvy reputations. And we paid them to develop hour-long sessions to present at the Tech Fest. And they presented on all kinds of programs and tools from Google Classroom and Seesaw and Edpuzzle, Kami, Flipgrid, you name it. So we began the day with a subject-specific professional development led by other TOSAs in our district and department chairs. And then we had 3 tech breakout sessions that were led by teachers from all over the district. And then we ended the day with site-based debriefs that were led by the principals at each site. And so throughout the day, teachers were able to pick and choose which sessions to attend based on their learning needs. And I was able to present on Google Meet platform because that was what our teachers were going to be using in the district instead of Zoom. And so overall, it was a huge success. We feel like it built our collective capacity, and we got a lot of positive feedback from teachers, and it truly set them up for success for online learning and beyond. And it helped some of our tech hesitant teachers to feel more comfortable using these various tools and platforms and sort of open their eyes to the value that ed tech can bring to their classroom. So this was a huge risk for us because we had never done this before. It was just kind of like, okay, we're doing it. We're going in all in. So the crushing part is, you know, womp womp. we won't be able to do it again this year because we were able to fund this event with that one-time COVID money last year. And so now the money's gone. We don't have that extra PD day anymore, and we can't do it again. But we think that this one-time big risk was definitely worth, the value that our teachers and our students gained from it.
Thank you. We used to joke that there can't be like a ed tech emergency, right? But then overnight, ed tech found itself in a year-long emergency, which hats off to everyone, teachers, trainers, directors, everyone that's been in ed tech and working so hard with teachers and students to get everyone trained and working. So thanks, Ashley. Shalimar.
Yeah, I really love what Amber had to say about being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that was kind of the name of the game all year long. And so for me, kind of a risk I took was shifting away from trying to recreate the traditional classroom model virtually, and instead kind of embracing those tools that we have digitally that we maybe don't use as much when we're in the regular classroom, even when we're a one-to-one district like we are in Menifee. So kind of what I noticed at the beginning of the year was I wasn't having that student engagement. They were very hesitant to speak out. And how can I encourage my students that this is still that safe place that they're used to in the classroom? And how can I use my digital tools that I have available to me? So we started doing the polls in Google Meet and Jamboards and things like that. And they were sharing their opinions, and not just their opinions, but why. And through those tools and taking those risks, I would say, hey guys, I've never used this one before. Let's give it a try. And what works, what doesn't work, and really getting that feedback from my students. And so they really did take ownership of their digital classroom. By the end of the year, I still had, this is a win, probably 90% of my students were still coming with their videos on every day, and I know like high school students, I have a high schooler, a middle schooler, and an elementary schooler in my own house, my own children. So I know high school, that was definitely a challenge. But yeah, by the end of the year, they were still like that buy-in was there. I was able to really create that still rigorous classroom environment and that inquiry-based learning through posing questions, a Jamboard with an image. Tell me which one doesn't belong and why, and things like that. And so those were some risks that I was taking as I'm trying to, build this airplane while I'm flying it, but also modeling for my students. I don't know this yet, but we're going to give it a try. What works, what didn't, and then move forward from there. And so it just became this really, I think the relationships I built this year were so much stronger than I imagined because of those risks that we took together.
Oh, thank you so much. That kind of goes with the question we'll ask later. So we're going to come back to some of that, but thank you. And Melissa.
Awesome. So I'm in a position like Molly where my job this year was to support school counselors. So at the district office, I support all the school counselors in our district. But one risk that I did take that I plan to continue to take is I made sure that either myself, most of the time it was myself, or another counselor was in every single committee meeting, regardless if that was an EL committee meeting, a math committee meeting, no matter what it was, because I always wanted the social emotional learning of the students to be at the forefront of everyone's mind. So now when a committee is convening, the district knows to call on a counselor, whoever that is, either if that's me or another counselor, to ensure that we're putting the social emotional learning of a student at the forefront of our mind when we're talking about math and ELA and everything else. Because if a student is not socially emotional healthy, it doesn't matter what we're teaching. They are not going to receive that. So that is something that I am planning to continue in the following school year.
Oh, Melissa, that's amazing. And thank you for bringing the counselor perspective here, because we don't often get it on these panels, and what an important point for the SEL and emotional health of our students. Thanks. And Joseph.
Thank you, Heidi, and thank you, panel. I definitely learned from you, and I loved everything that you said. I promised not to go long, but I just kind of wanted to cover three things. And so strategically, I say we would have a strategic risk because we already had a lot of systems in place built in that we leveraged. And so when crisis learning first happened, and of course, crisis learning turned into distance learning, let's be honest about what it was when we first started, we had to push a lot of autonomy on decision-making down to our site level techs. And so it's a risk. you're pushing that level of autonomy to making decisions to solve student problems and teacher problems. And they really flourished under that. But luckily for us, we had systems in place. When it comes to teaching and learning, I took a risk because, as was said in the panel, we just kind of threw these teachers into it. So I threw myself into their classrooms also. Open invitation to any teacher, send me a meet, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to co-teach, I'm going to co-plan. I don't know your content. I'm not strong on linear algebra. I am an English teacher, but I'm going to work with you on it. What was nice about that risk is I was able to be vulnerable and say, I don't know your content. I know teaching and learning, and was able to help them with things like, oh, students are resisting, right? And I would say, well, maybe resistance is actually a lack of clarity. Maybe we could work on that, right? So I threw myself, and also when we would go into classrooms and I would say things like, you know, students don't like to learn from teachers they don't like. Maybe we could work on that first, and putting myself out there. And then lastly, on a personal note, not tech related, but is a personal risk, is in the last year and a half, I've done, 2 years even, done more work personally on anti-racist education. That's a whole nother panel discussion, but putting myself out there to make mistakes, to interact with communities, to say the wrong things and apologize for saying the wrong things. But I would say personally, I've done a lot of work with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joseph. We appreciate your perspectives and your participation here in the panel and all the things that your district is doing in the region. So the next question you guys kind of all touched on, but, and this isn't for everyone, so whoever wants to answer, go ahead and just unmute and chime in. So you don't all have to answer if you don't want to. But what surprised you the most about your students' reaction to distance learning? What surprised you about, you know, Shalimar mentioned, you know, they were still engaged at the end, but what were some things that surprised you about your students?
I could start, and not to guide the panel in any way. When I first saw this question on what surprised me, I wrote down a certain number of things, and then I told myself, this shouldn't have surprised me. This shouldn't have surprised me, that students, you know, need to build relationships with their teachers first. If it's the face-to-face environment or the online environment, it shouldn't surprise me that when you're teaching students a new concept or a new classroom procedure, that there's going to be some hesitancy and you need to calibrate. And that's the same on an online environment. So when I wrote down my surprises, I went back the next day and said, should this really have surprised me that that in the face-to-face environment and the distance learning environment, that there are core principles that need to be covered? And then I had to reflect upon myself on why did that surprise me. So, but it should not have surprised me the level of staff, classified and certificated, and students that just stepped up to the challenge. They did awesome work, and we came out better for it. It's sad that a crisis had to happen for this to get this far, but I'm very pleased.
So I'll jump in and agree with you here. It shouldn't have been a surprise but for me, it was this takeaway of the resilience and perseverance of our students and teachers. And I kind of saw this a little bit in my own home with my own kids and their experiences, particularly my middle child, Cameron. She was finishing up first grade at the end of when the pandemic started. And so she missed that last quarter of her first grade year. And she wasn't reading well. And then we don't let our kids use electronic devices, or we didn't let them use electronic devices often prior to the pandemic. And so when they got the iPad from the district that she attends, it was like a foreign entity to her. And then she couldn't read on top of that. And so the first few months was struggle. She had lots of panic attacks and anxiety, and it was just a hot mess for a minute. But thankfully, she had a wonderfully patient teacher. And by October, she was navigating her device and getting her work done with very little help from me or her dad. And her teacher was also able to work with her in breakout rooms and small groups or in one-to-one settings online. And her reading skills increased exponentially. And so I was so proud of her perseverance and resilience, and how even through the frustration, she didn't give up. And by the end of the year, she was chosen as Student of the Month for having a positive attitude and not being afraid to ask questions for help. And her teacher said, like, it really knows that she cares about her learning. And so I think just from watching my daughter's own experience of frustration and anxiety at the beginning, and then being forced to engage in that productive struggle, and then persevering and showing resilience, this was similar to the experience that many of our students and teachers experienced this last year and a half. And like you said, Joe, it shouldn't be a shock, but watching the process play out was a shock. It was like, wow, like she did it. She persevered. Our teachers are doing it. Our students are doing it. This is amazing.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you so much. I love that point that Ashley just made about resilience and perseverance, because I feel like that's also been a theme of this year. I'm thinking about introverted students this year too. In a distance learning environment, I felt as though I was able to build relationships with introverted students that I might not have had the opportunity to build in the physical face-to-face classroom. Things like a private chat. We need a private chat in the classroom, you know, like hearing their voices, having some tell me, Ms. Hickman, I can't do this presentation. But you know what they did do instead? Hey, can I make a pear deck? So these new opportunities that we didn't necessarily have were paved this year. So I really, really love that surprise.
Yeah, thanks, Amber, for that, because I think it gave a chance for some kids to shine that may not have in a traditional face-to-face classroom. So that kind of leads to the next question. Amber already touched on this, but what would you take from this year and bring back to that face-to-face environment? What are some things that you learned, like Amber mentioned, building those relationships that you want to integrate back into face-to-face? Again, for anybody.
I think it's that relationship piece. You know, what we saw with teachers having office hours, and you'd get the same kids who would come in with either like a fake question that they needed help on. They felt like they needed an excuse to be there for office hours. But so many of my staff members realized these kids just want that connection. And of course, that tended to be the teachers that were already good at connection, but I think they're now better. I really think that student relationship is going to be so much more intentional, and student to student relationships as well. I had lots of staff members who did breakout rooms for students where they could just talk with their friends about a specific topic, you know, the Roblox breakout room and the Minecraft breakout room. The kids needed that, and they will still need that. We just saw more evidence of what we already know. Relationships are key.
Thanks.
Absolutely. And some of the things that you mentioned are some of the notes that I had written down here, but yeah, really creating that classroom environment. I became even more intentional about that because it was so much harder doing it virtually. But yeah, giving those opportunities and encouraging that student discourse. Of course, I have done that, you know, with math and different things, but trying to do that kind of in an overarching through the classroom day, having that, giving those students opportunities for that inquiry and exploration and all those kinds of things that I had the time for when we were meeting virtually, because I had those breakout rooms, because I had those office hours, which I don't know if any other teachers feel this way. I am going to miss those office hours. Sometimes I would just have students pop in just to work quietly while I'm grading, and you know, I'm going to miss the office hours for sure. But just yeah, it did reinforce the idea of building relationships, building relationships, building relationships. That still boils down to what it's all about. And so now that we've been able to see what that looks like virtually and how we were really able to hone in on that, now how do we translate that to the face-to-face classroom? By still, you know, maybe we have a study hall, maybe, you know, or different things that we provide opportunities for students to, you know, meet in a group during lunch one day a week or something like that, but really still being very intentional about how we build those relationships and how we can still create a really rigorous classroom environment through that student discourse. It's not either or. We can be highly academic and still highly relationship building. And I think that's really what this distance learning has taught us.
if teachers are struggling with this same question about what was in the online environment, so if you're a teacher out there and you're listening to this and you're like, what would I take from what we did online, and how does that translate to face-to-face? In general, the easy answer is we take the best of what technology allowed us to do, the efficiency, the force multiplier it allowed us to do. So I can't speak specifically for all your teaching acumen out there, but I would say we take the best of what technology allowed us to do, multiplying the teacher, being able to get individualized instruction, and we take the absolute best of what needed of face-to-face instruction. And that as teachers are learning experience designers, they're not lesson planners. As they're designing those learning experiences, they're taking into account what the lesson would look like if it was face-to-face. What the lesson would look like if it was all online. What would the lesson look like if it was hybrid? So that would be my recommendation, that each teacher do that some consideration about that.
Yeah, that integration of tech will be extremely powerful now when we take the best of what we've learned, right, and put that in the face-to-face classroom. I'm excited to see what's coming this year. I think I'm going to pass it over to John. John, you can pick up the next question?
Yeah, fantastic. So it kind of going off of that same theme, and it's been great to listen to you guys talk and start with risks and pulling in growth mindset and turning that into opportunities and relationships, and even pairing that with what Sunny Magana was talking about yesterday as far as learning acceleration. But looking at, this past year, not only is it going to affect your practice in the classroom, but how does it affect, how you participate in professional learning, or how students learn, or how we interact with our parents and community? How is this last year going to affect that? And again, feel free to just go ahead and unmute and share.
So I can speak to this a little bit. So literally all of our PD this year was done virtually. So not only did teachers have to adapt to the way that they provided instruction, we also had to adapt our ways of providing PD training and coaching to our teachers. And so going forward, we've learned that not everything we were doing in the past needs to be face-to-face. So we're actually going to be keeping some of that professional development and training virtual going forward. And we also, as far as students go, I think Sandra just mentioned in the comments a second ago that some of the students really thrived in the online environment, whereas others really struggled in the online environment. And so we know that this online environment is a place where some of our students do really well. And so although a majority are going to be going back to face-to-face instruction, that we're still going to continue to provide that option for students who prefer the online learning environment. So
I agree with Ashley. We were able to see a lot of things work better online. We did a lot of coffee with the counselors and advisory councils and our district school counselor, and we had more parents, students, and staff attend these meetings because they were online. And even with the coffee with the counselor, where we give out free coffee, Starbucks was willing to give the parents a code where they could just go into their local Starbucks and then get their coffee and then still come on. But it was easier for parents to do that at work because they could do it on the computer and engage with us while we had these conversations about what does your student need, and helping parents advocate for their families. What does your family need? What does your student need? Tell us, and then let us help you advocate. So then give them the tools where they could go back and either speak with the teacher or have their students speak with the teacher about exactly what they needed. So offering these choices online and in person is something that we want to continue to do, because we just realized that we got more participation when it was on the computer, especially when it came to parents and our staff, because they didn't have to run from where they were at to get to where we were to be able to participate in it.
All right. Any others wanted to jump in on that one? All right, thank you. Looking at, I know this wasn't a question that we threw out to you, but looking at the way that risks were viewed last year in the year of COVID and everything, it seems everything was a risk. like, what do you guys see, or how do you hope that risks are embraced in the coming year and in years to come?
So from when we first did our Scholar Plus Teaching and Learning Initiative, we had a bunch of teachers that said, I have to know everything the students are going to do before they do that. And I said, that's just so unreasonable. It's so unreasonable that, no, I have to be highly competent on this platform. And I'm like, that is just an unreasonable expectation. And so our best teachers took risks and allowed the students to, like one of the panelists mentioned, allow the students to submit an alternative assignment to demonstrate mastery, right? And so working with teachers to understand that there's alternative ways that students can demonstrate mastery, and that they don't have to know how to operate that platform, that seesaw, that whatever they're using. They don't need to know how to use that. They need to be able, teachers need to be comfortable with that risk, that the students are going to be more highly proficient than them on those things, and that the students should be using alternative means of assessment. And then also not grading on the beauty of the project, but more of the learning process. And so that's what I would recommend, teachers taking risk and getting out of that bubble.
I would say too, in the educational technology realm, when I became an ed tech specialist, I was very uncomfortable with that word specialist, because I thought, oh, this means I have to know everything there is to know about ed tech, and I don't. And most of my teaching experience prior to stepping outside the classroom, my students didn't have access to the technology to even be able to use some of the tools that were out there at the time. And so it was kind of daunting for me personally to step into this role, but then kind of just taking on the mindset of, I'm an emerging ed tech specialist and I'm a learning, and I'm never going to know all the things there are to know about educational technology, because technologies are being rapidly developed every single day. And so I think for teachers, just embracing that same mindset of, you're not going to know it all, like, ever. There's never an end for educational technology. Find the tools and the strategies that work for you and for your students, and become experts at those. And that's going to make for better planning, teaching, and learning for your kids, and take a lot of stress off yourself. So just lifelong learner growth mindset, embrace that.
Yeah, absolutely. We preach that growth mindset to our students. Yay, we're making mistakes. You're building neurons. It's okay not to know. You just don't know yet. And I think experiencing that and really kind of putting our money where our mouth is, it is uncomfortable. It is an opportunity to really model that kind of lifelong learner growth mindset. We're figuring it out for our students, also for ourselves. And, you know, when we get to that place where we are uncomfortable, that's where a lot of growth can happen. And so kind of always kind of being on that edge of, you know, what works best here, what didn't work.
Uh-oh, it looks like we may have lost Shalimar for a second.
That's
So-
okay. It will never happen during online teaching.
Oh, we got you back. All right. Anybody else? All right. So I want to wrap it up with, you know, one last question. This is kind of for everybody, so please make sure that we'd love to hear this one. But we've heard a lot about, you know, embracing the lifelong learner, and again, there was the taking risks and the growth mindset. And then Joseph, I really loved what you said about taking the best of what technology has and using that to move forward. So the last question is, with all the risks that you took, there were things that worked and things that didn't work. But what was one of those things that you learned that worked that you really want to have impact, you know, not only the coming year, but, you know, the years to come, I guess I would say. So we'll go down the line. I know we started with you, Molly, last time. I'll change it up a little bit. So let's start with Joseph.
Thank you. So doing a lot of reflection over this year or longer than that about what has worked in our district and what has worked in the region. A lot of it, none of it came down to that we didn't know. Like we didn't know about EdTech, like we didn't know about effectiveness, and we didn't know about Hattie's research, and we didn't, like, no, we knew about all these things, but why had we not been prepared enough for this distance learning? And it came down to behaviors, and it came to teachers' behaviors and students' behaviors, and how do you change behavior? So for me, I needed to do some more looking into how you motivate people, how you demotivate people, and don't do that. And we knew all these things. It wasn't a surprise that we were going to have a reliance on the effectiveness and the efficacy of technology tools, but we didn't take full advantage of the growth mindset. We just didn't. Let's just be honest, we didn't. So what it came down to is when teachers were forced to have to use those behaviors and change those things is when all of a sudden we started to get growth. And I would say that what we need to do is, instead of doing like a post-mortem about what went wrong, I think what we should do in our districts, and we should be looking about what went right, we should look at the best of, and that we should scale up with that. And we should really rely, and it should be no surprise that I'm an advocate for teacher leadership, not top-down approaches, and that we should rely on our teacher leadership to help move us forward. So one of the things that we definitely think that we should focus on is teacher leadership, classified educator leadership, and that we know all this other stuff. We've done all the research, we've read Sony's and we've read Hattie's and we've read all that. Let's focus on how we change behavior, and let's look at the best of what we've been doing and model that.
Awesome, thank you. Let's jump over to Melissa.
I knew you were going to pick me next. So going on what Joseph said, talking about what we did right? So I think we all know how important student voice is, but this year, I think everyone made sure to include student voice. So every committee that I held, everything that I did, I always made sure that a student was in the room, because us as adults think we know what students want, but we really don't until we ask. And we had a school counselor coffee with a counselor, school counselor advisory council, where we invited people from all over the community. Our mayor of Menifee actually joined our advisory council, and we had 3 meetings. And by the end, all the adults were listening to what the students had to say, right? And it was only about school counseling because I felt like that was a safe space. But what did we do right? And what did you not like? And what would you like for us to do different next year and for the coming years? And when I tell you, these kids gave us the most amazing answers that we would have never thought about as an adult, but we will do next year, right? Because not only is it important to listen to the kids, it's important for them to know that they are heard. So we not only listen to them, but now we're going to put everything that they told us into action. And we made sure we talked to them about what are 3 things, what are 3 non-negotiables that you would like for your school counseling department to do next year? And that is in our action plan for next year. We will do those 3 things that those students asked us to do, because that is important. And they will always know that adults in Menifee are listening, and we are going to do what is reasonable. We talked about what is reasonable for you to make sure that you are enjoying school and that you're learning, right? And that you want to be here, because at the end of the day, the kids said Menifee is the place to be. And we want to continue to encourage them that this is the place to be, because there are adults in Menifee that care about what you have to say.
Thank you. Shalimar.
Absolutely. I really love, Melissa, what you were talking about. At our site, we have a student site council, and that was kind of a shift in the classroom, was getting that student feedback. I really feel like we got an insight into who they were so much more this year, and really focusing on that moving forward. This is your classroom, whether it's room 14 and my name's on the door, it's still your classroom, and what do you need to be successful? And really having, I'm a facilitator of your learning, but this is your environment, and how does that look for you?
Awesome, thank you so much. Amber.
Yeah, I have to agree, and I didn't know I was going next, but I have to mimic what Melissa and Shalimar are saying, and student voice is key, and it's going to be key for me going forward. What that looks like academically for me was really taking the lid off of what's possible. I had to realize my students can do more than what I have planned in my mind for them. So having a project that leads with questions, open-ended questions, inquiry-based learning, not deciding the vehicle that they're going to use to show me their subject matter knowledge, letting them decide that. So I have the parameters in place for what you have to show me you know, but how you show me is up to you. And what I got back from them was I couldn't have imagined, honestly. And also just interpersonally, giving them voice. We did in our distance learning classroom turn up Thursdays. They submitted an inspirational funny video from social media. We spent 2 minutes of our class time watching a funny video. So student voice goes to building community too. So those are things I'm going to take with me.
Fantastic. Ashley.
Yeah, so I think it's really important that we keep good teaching practices at the forefront of what we're doing in the classroom. Outside of all the technology, it really doesn't matter what environment you're in, whether it's distance, completely online, or hybrid, or face-to-face. There's 4 things I feel like with teaching practices that we need to keep at the forefront. And the panelists have already discussed the first one. It's real relationships, fostering those positive real relationships with your students, getting to know them as human beings, utilizing social emotional learning competencies, and using intentional strategies to build community. So real relationships is number 1. Clear communication is number 2. It's being clear and consistent with what you expect from your students, no matter what environment, and explicitly teaching, modeling, and praising productive collaborative discussion practices. So I'll be talking a little bit more about that point in my session at 9:30 if you want to join me. Third thing, intentional instruction. We've talked about this today, but defining those clear learning objectives with rigorous grade level content, engaging student-centered methods that gives them access to synthesize and apply their learning, and being transparent about your success criteria. So what students should know, what they're expected to do to demonstrate mastery. And the last thing is so critical. It's formative feedback. So focusing on formative assessment and providing that relevant, timely feedback to your students that's going to stimulate their metacognitive thinking and reflection so that they can improve what they're working on in your classroom. So those 4 things, keep them good teaching practices in the forefront of your mind, no matter what environment you're in.
Thank you so much. And Molly.
Well, I think everybody said it better than I could have. A couple of notes that I had put down about, the affordances of technology. Well, Joseph said that much better. Take the best of what tech let us do last year in all of the areas that Ashley mentioned, bringing in the fun activities like Amber mentioned, and moving those into our face-to-face classroom. Those are things that worked. As Melissa said, we had better parent engagement in so many ways this year. And as Shalimar said, what we hold our kids to and the choices that we give them, those are all things that we can learn from. And so as I move into this next year, I'm going to be asking teachers, what did you learn this past year? And what are you going to take going forward as we move into this rebound year that's going to make the year better?
Thank you all so much. I'm going to give a sorry, not sorry, because we went a little bit beyond the 9:15, but at the same point, I don't think anybody's complaining. I'm looking at the chat, and just the love you're getting from all the participants is amazing. So I gotta say thank you all for participating in this. As Eileen said, yeah, y'all are inspiring, and thank you for not looking at this last year as like a loss, but transitioning it into from a risk to a growth mindset, opportunities, and looking at how we can use what we've learned to really accelerate the learning, taking the best of what we've done and really pushing that forward. So I just want to say thank you. Heidi?
Yeah, agreed. Amazing discussion. Thank you guys so much for being here. And I said in the chat, we could have conversations with each of you individually for hours to learn from you. So thank you so much for giving us a glimpse into your year and all your advice. We really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, and also got to throw out a thank you to everybody who joined, because I guarantee that you all have amazing things to share as well. And so we were glad that we were able to get a group of people that had some things to share to build off of that knowledge. So we'll say we're looking at like 9:22. I know that the 9:30 sessions are starting here in a little bit. So we hope you have a great morning of learning and sharing. And then we will see you back at for the lunchtime session. Don't forget to come back. And as you can tell, I'm going to kind of dust my shoulder off on this one, but the group of organizers has put together some great keynotes for and lunchtime sessions. This obviously being an amazing group. So thank you all for coming. Look forward to seeing you at lunch. Thank you, panelists. As you can, if you open up the chat, you're going to see nothing but love. And obviously it echoes the love that you all showed for your students as well. So thank you all. Have a great morning, and we'll see you back at lunch.
Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everyone.